Greetings. All right, we will be reading a little bit from this book, The Real RFK Jr. Trials of a Truth Warrior by Dick Russell. If you don't know who Dick Russell is, you are missing out. A great author, great writer. He wrote one of the best books that I've ever read on JFK. It is called The Man Who Knew Too Much. This is the story of Richard Case Nagel, which is a fascinating story. But this definitely, he's also written a book about Jim Garrison too, and big Jim Garrison fan. You'll get a lot of that from just a few short chapters inside here. You will love it. Please check that out. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read here a little bit from one of the most powerful and most insightful, one of the most head scratchers related to the relationship between Kennedy and Trump. There are so many different interesting things when we talk about Kennedy and Trump, but this has got to be one of the most fascinating ones to know that at some point, Donald Trump wanted to hire RFK Jr. And I'm going to read a little bit starting at page 277, the very bottom of page 277. Okay. Over the Christmas, and this is Dick Russell writing this, over the Christmas holidays in 2016, the newly elected president, Donald Trump, called Bobby, talking about RFK Jr. This is what RFK Jr. says. He asked me to come to New York and meet with him at Trump Tower, Bobby remembers. I had known Trump for many years. I had successfully sued to block him from building 2 golf courses in the New York Upstate Reservoir watershed. I knew he was no friend of the environment, but neither did he appear to be ideologically hidebound to a pro-pollution worldview. Indeed, he seemed less shackled by dogma and obliged by encumbrances than any other Republican presidential candidate. And this is back to Dick Russell. So when Trump said he wanted to talk with him concerning vaccine safety, Bobby was willing to give it a shot. There were rumors that Trump's 10-year-old son, Barron, might have symptoms of the autism spectrum, and perhaps this was something closer to the man's heart than his pocketbook. On January 10 of the new year, this would be 2017, Bobby left his home in Malibu and flew to Manhattan. Others he remembered being at the meeting included Vice President Mike Pence, Steve Bannon, Reince Priebus and his sons, and Kellyanne Conway. Trump asked Bobby to have a press conference afterward and make the announcement. There, he told reporters he'd been asked to chair a new commission on vaccine safety and scientific integrity, and he had agreed, he being RFK Jr. So there it is. So there's been some question about what did Trump want RFK to do. There's even been theories like Anthony Fauci floated a theory that nobody wanted, RFK to be part of this team, to lead a vaccine safety team. And Jared Kushner gets involved in this too. And when when Trump hires Kennedy to lead the vaccine safety committee, Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, these guys all start to freak out. And Jared Kushner, which is an interesting one. Jared Kushner wants Fauci to be a part of this meeting with RFK Jr. And they're going to try to force him out. And obviously, they succeeded at some point. The book goes on. Bobby was willing to give Trump a chance to prove himself. He told an interviewer afterward that he believed the president-elect would come into office less encumbered by ideology or his obligations than anybody that has won the presidency since at least Andrew Jackson. He described Trump as, quote, very thoughtful on the issue. He had some doubts about the current vaccine policies. He says his opinion doesn't matter, but the science does matter, and we ought to be reading and debating the science. Everybody ought to be able to be assured that the vaccines that we have are as safe as they can possibly be. Now, I could not find the full press conference from RFK Jr. that happened here in early 2017. What I was able to find was somebody catching Kennedy down the hall, asking him a couple questions. But if anybody does have the actual full interview or the press conference that Kennedy gave here, stating that Trump wanted him to be part of his team and that Kennedy had accepted, I would love to find that. I'm also interested to find out more about the 2 times that Kennedy had actually sued Donald Trump when Trump wanted to build golf courses in New York, and Kennedy won. Kennedy had already beaten Don. I think this happened like in the 90s, maybe the 80s or something, but I'd like to find out more about that too. I really haven't been able to find anything more about that to try to understand the relationship between these 2 guys and how far back it goes. And Kennedy had also said at one point, I believe when he was speaking at the Alabama, some Alabama conference, RFK Jr. recently was speaking there. And of course, this one got scrubbed. I cannot find it. It is not, it's just not out there. But Kennedy said after these lawsuits, after Kennedy won, he flew on Trump's plane. So even after Trump lost, Trump didn't take it personally, and he flew on the plane with Kennedy, and they were cordial and very nice, and everything was good. So what could come between Kennedy and Trump? We know what come between them. It's the same cast of characters: Fauci, Bill Gates, and just some of these horrible people that Trump should have never surrounded himself with back in 2016 and 2017. And those are not people that are there now. Those are not people that will be in the next Trump administration, but there's going to be a lot of focus on those people, and that Trump hired them or let them into the cabinet, let them into the White House, let them run the EPA, let them run all of these government companies, whatever you want to call them. But the second time around, Trump is saying he's not going to do that. And RFK Jr. will say, why does he deserve a second chance? So that's where the voters are going to have to decide: Trump 2024 or RFK Jr. 24. Think with your heart or with your head. I don't know. I could flip it around. I got hats and I got shirts for both of these guys. So don't take it too literally from my view. Okay, let's keep going. So yeah, I really want that press conference. I really want to hear exactly what was said by Trump, what was said by Kennedy during that. To me, that's very, very important. And who knows? We'll see what happens. You never know what life will bring you. I'm just looking at, yeah, okay. Cool. That's pretty cool. Anyone watching on Facebook, it's not allowing me to comment or even show the comments here, so I do apologize for that. It's the first time I've ever done this simulcast on YouTube and Facebook. I got the duck-free zone for another month, so we'll see how all that goes. But it's testing out. I'm going to keep reading. This is the bottom of page 278 of a great book, The Real RFK Jr. Trials of a Truth Warrior. This is really the crux. A lot of this is how the book will start, is how my book, Kennedy and Trump, will start, because it's so important to understand their relationship. And I did not realize that all of this goes back to the vaccines. And I was very curious that Dick Russell, I don't believe that Dick Russell would just say something in his book and just put it out there if there wasn't something to it, if there wasn't something that we could look at. Because we had heard that Trump had a family member who got autism, who was on the spectrum. And even in the leaked video with Kennedy and Trump, which I will play that here too, but you can clearly see that there was some more to it, to that leaked video. But I did not realize that it would have been Trump's son, Barron, that may have been on the spectrum, that may have taken a vaccine or taken a shot or something that may have actually harmed him, harmed his health. That's a fascinating thing that I learned by reading The Real RFK Jr. Let me keep reading here. Within hours, a Trump spokesperson qualified Bobby's statements, saying the president is, quote, exploring the possibility of forming a commission on autism. However, no decision has been made. And Trump was said to be discussing all aspects of autism with many groups and individuals. So already the Trump team is like, whoa, 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 you gotta back up, gotta back up. We don't want this guy. We don't want RFK Jr. here. This guy might actually really do something. We might actually really get to the bottom of some of these things. We might actually be able to talk about the topic that shall not be named, which is already mentioned. And we know what's going to happen. Every time it happens, I see it. I see exactly what YouTube and social media does. And it doesn't matter. It's not what it's about. Let's keep rolling. The behind the scene blowback was apparently swift, Dick Russell continued, writing. Now, here is RFK Jr. in a quote. One of the things that happened, Bobby revealed a few years later, is that Pfizer immediately made $1 million donation to the inaugural party. Then President Trump put Alex Azar, a hand-picked Pfizer lobbyist, in charge of health and human services, and Scott Gottlieb, who was also handpicked by Pfizer to head the FDA. We'd had some pretty good meetings during the first part of the administration, but then these guys came in and said, we're not going to talk to you anymore, and shut us down. So there it is. Once again, we have more of this, people getting in the middle of Trump trying to do what's right for the country and RFK Jr. trying to do the exact same thing. These two guys are a formidable team. These two guys are like, it's like putting Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair on the same team. Nobody could touch them. That's why they had to keep them separate. They really wanted to keep them separate. So at the time, Bobby didn't speak publicly about what he'd learned and experienced. When asked about what happened to the commission by Stat News that following summer, Bobby said he had no specific discussions about it since probably February. You'd have to ask the White House, he added. It may be that it's evolved. I've been told that the president is still interested in this issue. RFK Jr. is such a classy guy, very classy guy. Even when he gets the shaft and gets shut down by these guys that he knows have no business being in the White House or being around Trump. And that's Trump's own fault for surrounding himself with these people. Again, we know Trump, they're not there now. They weren't there the whole four years. You can see he opened the door for Fauci, and he's the one who also shut that door. Trump gets a lot of criticism for closing down the country, but never gets any credit for being one of the first people to try to reopen the country either. They can't have it both ways. Now, if the pharmaceutical industry had moved quickly to prevent such a commission from happening, the reaction was just as extreme as Bobby's longtime allies. I had the environmental community turn against me, Bobby told me, which was weird because Trump had just won and hadn't done anything bad yet. We certainly had expectations he would be a terrible president, but I met with every president. I'd even met with Bush, who was the worst thing that ever happened to the environment, and the environmentalists didn't complain. With the president you don't like, I always thought it was much better to meet with them than not. I didn't know about the Bush thing. That's interesting too. The organizations with which he was connected did not agree. There was already tension with the Hudson River Keepers, whose new president had other reasons to want to get rid of me. This was the first and oldest relationship to sever. I had enough control on the board that if I had brought it to a vote, as I had done 15 years earlier with Boyle, I could have won again. But I felt like I'd create an institution, and this would mean shattering that institution and then rebuilding it. It felt like ego on my part. It seemed like maybe it was better to just relinquish the fight and leave Riverkeeper intact and move on without knowing what I was going to do. So this is another thing where time and time again, you're going to see Kennedy take the high road here. And what he's talking about here, if you never read this book, The River Keepers by John Cronin and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., this is a great book for any environmentalist, anyone who cares about rivers, cares about waters. And really, there's some other stuff inside here too. There's just some good things about Kennedy and Kennedy's past that are in this book too. So that is definitely a great book. But I always wondered why, because I haven't heard of the River Keepers until recently. And so then I wonder why, what happened with the River Keepers? Well, that's what happened. That is what happened. And that is one of the reasons why Kennedy is very reluctant to take any job in the White House when Trump wins in 2024. Kennedy is very reluctant to do that. So, let's see if there's anything else about here. Page 280 has a little bit. Trump's advisors turned their attention to dismantling the science safety net and commoditizing and monetizing every aspect of human discourse, adopting policies that will amplify the wealth of billionaires, even as they sicken our citizens and destroy our planet. The book of Revelation describes the four horsemen as war, conquest, pestilence, and death. Donald Trump's choice to invite a group of conscienceless oil men to govern the country has brought such chilling metaphors to the foreground as more than an obscure biblical reference. Ooh. As Bobby told Stat News that summer, President Trump's administration is essentially destroying 30 years of my work on environmental issues and the work of many other people, and I've written extensively about that. He said that he said this has been part of his discussion with Trump in January, and the president well knew Bobby's position. Then Bobby added, if President Trump asked me to serve on a commission on fracking or on pipelines or on global warming, I would do it. Or, as J.B. Hanley put it, you know that old saying, you'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Bobby's the warrior in the garden for sure. Good stuff right there. So then it goes on. If you didn't know about RFK Jr. and Monsanto and DuPont, that's another great story here. This book is just so easy to read. If you really want to get caught up on the real RFK Jr., getting away from all the propaganda, all what people say, who he is, blah, blah, blah. You really want to hear it from his side. This is a great one to read. The Real RFK Jr. It is written by Dick Russell, again, a trusted author. But another good one to read is right from Kennedy's own words, right here. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., American Values, Lessons I Learned from My Family. He said this started out as a long letter to someone, and it ended up being almost a biography, a family biography about Hickory Hill and some very interesting stuff. And it's far different than his other books. I would say it's far different than The Real Anthony Fauci, far different than the other one here. Won't say the name, but I think you get it, which I have not read yet, but I am definitely reading it. And then the far different than his most recent one, besides the one that is coming out in October, a new book coming out in October. But you got to read this one too. This is a fascinating one. Yeah, it may be stuff you already know. You may even think it's tame. You may even think that it doesn't go as far as you would like it to go, but it's a great book. It's a great, fascinating story from a fascinating human being, in my point of view. All right. So then from there, I believe it's page 3. If you want to read more, you can always go to page 303 and you can see this chapter, At War Over Vaccines. So I'll just read a little bit of this. I don't know how much of this really covers Donald Trump, but that was I was just fascinated by the relationship. Yeah, I think only the first couple sentences, and then I'll move on here. At War Over Vaccines, page 303. After Bobby met with Donald Trump to discuss chairing a commission on vaccine safety, the announcement was called very frightening by Peter Hotez, dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. Hotez called the Washington Post Hotez told the Washington Post that massive evidence showed no link between vaccine and autism, which he described as a genetic condition. Bobby responded by drafting a letter to his critic, January 19, 2017, which in retrospect is worth quoting at some length. It's not a conspiracy, Peter. It's an orthodoxy. It's exactly like what happened to the Catholic Church during the pedophile scandal. Only a small number of priests were involved in harming children or in the direct conspiracy, but everyone became complicit in the cover up: the bishops, the Vatican, the police, and the press. The institution became more important than the children it was meant to protect. Decent and well meaning men and women made subtle calculations that silence was the best course and that the victims were sacrifices for the greater good. A lot of smart, moral men put their heads down, ignored the obvious, and kept moving forward. Eventually, all orthodoxies are cruel, often lethal. They are misogynistic and anti science. They require blind faith in an often undeserving authority. So there it is. I won't read too much more. I'm surprised I haven't been kicked off of YouTube. Who knows what's going on with Facebook? I just got back on Facebook 2 days ago, so I'm sure that's not going to last very long. But for now, that is all I wanted to read from that amazing book, and I hope you will consider it. I am writing this for the book that I'm writing, Kennedy and Trump, which has once again taken on a life of its own. Where to begin, where to end? Well, I know where I want to begin with the book because I really want to begin with the relationship between Kennedy and Trump, especially going over these last months here as we get closer to choosing the next president of the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. With that, I am now going to turn to a little news, but maybe I am going to play. I believe I am. I think I am going to go ahead and search for and then play this clip here in case hopefully everybody's seen it. If you haven't seen it, well, I'm about to play it for you. Like to hear it? Here it goes. The audio is probably going to be really rough. The audio is already really rough, but I'm sure it's going to be even a little bit more rough here. But I'll do my best to play it. Hopefully you can hear it. First, I will pause. Do that. I'll do this. And it's about a minute and some odd seconds. I'm going to turn on the caption. I don't know how good they are, but here we go.
I agree with you, man. Something's wrong with that whole system. Yeah. I agree with you, man. Something's wrong with that whole system. Yeah. And, and it's the doctors you find. Remember I said I want to do small doses. Small doses. When you feed a baby, Bobby, a vaccination that has like 38 different vaccines, and it looks like it's meant for a horse, not a 10-pound or 20-pound baby. It looks like you should be giving a horse this. And do you ever see the size of it, right? It's just massive. And then you see the baby all of a sudden starting to change radically. I've seen it too many times. And then you hear that it doesn't have an impact, right? But you and I talked about that a long time ago. And anyway, I would love you to do something. And I think it would be so good for you and so big for you. And we're going to win. We're going to win. We're way ahead of the guy. And, he's interesting. He was very nice, actually. He called me. And he said, how did you choose to move to the right? So I guess that's, people say, if I was looking straight on, right? He said, I said, I was just showing a chart. I didn't have to tell him the chart was on all the people pouring into our country, right? But I just turned my head to show the chart. And something wrapped me. It felt like a giant, like the world's largest mosquito. And it was a bullet going around. What do they call that? An AR-15 or something? That was a big gun. Those are pretty tough guns, right?
Okay, so that is
Mr. Kennedy,
that.
it's Chris Jarwold. I have a quick question. Mr. Kennedy, it's Chris Jarwold. I have
Go back. So that was from, just going to pull up some of the notes that I have on it. If I can get to it.
This might be the issue that determines the election, and many people believe it is. Are you going to do a national abortion ban? Would you support that? Yes or no?
So I don't need a national ban because it's up to the states. Right now, what I did is something that people have wanted to do for.
That video was from July 14th. It was leaked. It was leaked a little bit later. I believe it was leaked on the 17th. It came out then. And Kennedy was mortified by it. He was completely mortified by that. He even put out a statement that he said, and he put this out When President Trump called me, I was taping with an in-house videographer. I should have ordered the videographer to stop recording immediately. I'm mortified that this was posted. I apologize to the president. It's reposted or tweeted, whatever you want to call it, by Kennedy's son to Bobby Kennedy 3. So that didn't help. And then here we have another instance where these two guys are getting so close together, so close to working together, and then something like this happens. It's sad to see. It is really sad to see. So it broke my heart. All right. Well, that is what I got for just the Kennedy and Trump relationship here. That is what I've been looking for. Again, I'm looking for a few more things on the Kennedy and Trump relationship. It's a fascinating story, and I'm curious to see how this goes, how this ends. But you can clearly hear in that clip, Trump wants Kennedy to be involved in his campaign. He wants him to be involved somehow. And they're specifically talking about the vaccines. And Kennedy is saying, I probably should play that one because he's been asked about this. Would you join? Would you be in Trump's cabinet? And he gives a pretty good answer. He's like, look, man, I gave this guy a chance. And I will try to see if I can find that clip. But he's like, I gave him a chance and it did not, he was very upset by it. Here it is. I found it. It's about 5 minutes. I don't know if I'll play the whole thing, but
on the off chance,
it's really good here. So I'll play a little bit of this. It's definitely worth it.
on the off chance that you're not elected in November, and that Donald Trump is elected, would you be willing to work for him in some capacity to do what you're talking about?
I don't think so. I mean, I would listen to a proposal, but I don't think so. I don't think.
You wouldn't serve your country.
Well, I'm not confident that I could do that. If I had that confidence, I would. I think. I don't think. Anyway,
What you've been talking about. I mean, the backstory, because we don't have the time, but we're talking about America. And when I interviewed your cousin, Caroline Kennedy, at one point we were talking about how your uncle, Teddy, would exhort you cousins to memorize Longfellow's poem, Paul Revere's Ride. And it reminded me of a different America, because when people talk about, say, I'm a Kennedy Democrat, that's pretty dramatically different than what the party has become. There was a love of country. And I think that when you talk about your uncle's desire, your father's desire to right these wrongs, there's something noble about that. And it's hard not to admire that. And to think that we're 6 decades along and that we're still dealing with this stuff. Most Americans still aren't awake to this.
So I'm just going to cut in here.
Hi, this is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with a special message for you in the wake of the dramatic events of the past few weeks. With President Biden stepping aside, the controlled environment around the presidential election has been shaken. We are in completely new territory. Meanwhile, I'm happy to report my poll numbers are surging. In fact, a recent poll by Zolby showed that in a two-way race between me and President Trump, I win 57% to President Trump's 43%. My poll numbers are better than Ross Perot's in 1992, when he got 19% against Bill Clinton and George Bush. Here's a little known fact about that election. Pollsters in 1992 asked people as they came out of the voting booth, would you have voted for Perot if you thought he could win? And 36% said yes. Those numbers show that Ross Perot could have won the election if people had voted their conscience. Perot only lost because the media hammered in a message into the public that a vote for Perot was a wasted vote, and the public believed them. As it turns out, it was all a lie. Now we have another chance. We can align our votes with what we actually want. Polls show that 51% of the public now identifies as independent. If those people vote their conscience, I will win in a landslide. Now is the moment to break America out of the two-party straitjacket. You can help me to do that by contributing to my campaign. When we meet and exceed our fundraising goals, it sends a message that, yes, I can win.
He
The
can.
hours are counting down to the election, and the situation is urgent. We have a crucial FEC deadline on July 31st. Please contribute as much as you can today. Here are 3 options. Press 1, and you'll be transferred to a live staffer who is standing by to talk with you. Press 2, and you'll be automatically sent a text message with a link to our donation page. Press 3, and you can leave a voicemail message. Thank you again for your generous support. Together, we can make history.
Very cool. So I had to break in there because that just came across. He called me. Kennedy called me. Well, yeah, the Kennedy phone booth called, and that's what they're doing now. I just thought that was cool. Thought I'd break in for that. All right, let me go back to this because this is pretty important stuff here. All right. Let's do it.
To the narrative. I mean, you know, you're giving us chapter and verse on where the bullets were, and most Americans think, oh, Sirhan, you know, Lee Harvey, you know, and again, not that that's the most important thing, but it points to the deeper truth that we're supposed to be a self-governing people, and it seems that some of the forces that you've been working against have been. They're taking great pains to demonize anybody like you that would question the narrative, and so it seems to me that you have to have hope that people are waking up. I mean, did the 51 people who signed that document denouncing the Hunter Biden laptop as Russian disinformation? I mean, I think that there are many Americans that are aware that something very nasty is going on, that we've got to do something about it. And I just think that whether you are in the White House or outside of the White House, that you know, you're uniquely appointed to be working for this. So I'd like to think that America would mean enough to you that.
You know, I would, first of all,
And by the way, if Biden should win, I don't think you're getting a call from him, by the way.
no, I'm not, but I do want to just emphasize what you just said about those people here may not know what you're talking about. I think most of them do, but there were 51 high-level acting or inactive CIA officials who signed a letter saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, which was a lie. It was tampering with the US election, what they were doing. And it was the CIA tampering with the US election. And the fact that, you know, I mean, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump's, and one of the reasons that I don't think I'd go to work for him is because he offered me a job in the last administration, and then he took $1 million from Pfizer, and then.
I mean, I've heard that story, and I think a lot of us were in a different place at that time. A lot of us have a very different view of Pfizer and Moderna than we did at that point, and actually a very different view of many things than we did at that point.
When somebody looks you in the eye and tells you, I want you to do this, and then, you know, it was a big cost for me to go announce that I'm joining the Trump administration, an enormous cost. And then, you know, and then nothing is there.
Nothing happens.
It makes you less willing to, you know, then entrust to trust that person again. So, you know, like I said, I would listen to a proposal. My objective is to help my country.
Amen to that. So that's the story. That's the whole story as far as I know it, as far as I can find so far. If anybody has any other information on it, I'd be I'd love to hear it because I can't find a whole lot more on this. The two stories, right? The first one, the major one, is I was baffled. I didn't even know that Kennedy was being considered to run to be hired by Trump and all that and everything. Trump's got to answer for that. And there's some big problems that I have with that, with everything that happened there. And it's sad. It's really sad. Then we have a guy named Rand Paul who also is going to give us some reasons why he is not ready to endorse Trump yet. And he said this a couple times, and this is really good, I think, here too. Let me play a few minutes of that.
President Biden attempting to squash any fears about his age in a new political ad for battleground states.
I know I'm not a young man, but I know how to do this job. When you get knocked down, you get back up.
Senator Rand Paul has been sounding the alarm on the president's mental acuity for months, and he joins us now. Senator, good morning. Great to see you. So just Team Biden is trying to argue that the president is fit for the job, that he may be older, but what we saw last Thursday night was not normal. Definitely not. What was your take on watching the president, given your observations over the past couple of months?
You know, my concern is that weakness invites tragedy. You know, with the evacuation in Afghanistan, and this is, a year or two ago now, the weakness of it, retreating from a commercial airport instead of retreating if we were going to leave from the Air Force Base at Bagram, which would have been a much more sound military strategy. In that weakness, 13 soldiers died. But then the reaction also comes from a point of weakness and perhaps related to senility, is that he overreacts. And so he says, well, we must do something, and I must show that I'm not weak. And so there's an overreaction, and they killed an aid worker and several children with a drone because we must do something. The world thinks I'm weak. Americans think I'm weak. They think I'm ineffectual, so I have to do more. So really the problem with weakness often isn't inaction, it's overaction and response. But it also sends a signal to the world that America doesn't know what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, we saw the warnings from Khomeini recently from the Ayatollah saying something's going to happen somewhere around the world at one of your bases. And I take that at face value. And I think we have to be prepared. But I think we have to be cognizant that weakness leads to overreaction, could lead to something much worse.
Yeah, the country is facing big issues, big threats. The New York Times puts it this way. They said the image of the nation has become some combination of unhinged and doddering, especially striking at a time when the U.S. is supposed to be leading the fight against a rising alliance of autocracies that includes China, Russia, and Iran. Also, of course, Senator, over the weekend, the U.S. military was warned in Europe that a credible intel threat for a terrorist attack was in place over the next week or so. So while back home we're having this debate about Joe Biden's mental acuity and, trying to debunk these lies from the White House about whether he actually is having these problems or not, the rest of the world is watching, and the adversaries, as you say, are taking advantage of that weakness.
Well, and I think that you can see in contrast Donald Trump. Donald Trump, probably like very few other leaders, projects strength. He sometimes is bombastic, but nobody believes that he will sit idly by. But interestingly, and I've been around him when we were attacked, we had a drone shot down by the Iranians, and around him were many other people like, we've got to do something. We must bomb Tehran. We must invade Iran. And his response was much more reasoned, but his response was also such that he cared about every soldier, and he knew for every reaction there'd be a reaction, and that he was concerned, how many Iranian soldiers will we kill? How many will they come back and kill? And it was a very thoughtful process, much more so than I think people give Donald Trump credit for. But I think by projecting strength, you're allowed to have a more measured response. If you project weakness, like Biden does, then you become hysterical that I must do something. I must do something. We must attack. We must invade, because otherwise I will look weak. Right. So I think if you can project strength like Donald Trump does, it may actually save us and prevent us from entering into war needlessly.
Yeah, panic never gives us good results in terms of policy, whether it's domestic or foreign policy. Senator, you've been a supporter of President Trump. The RNC convention is in about 2 weeks' time in Milwaukee. Are you going to give him your full endorsement?
You know, I have told them I'm persuadable, but I'm going to need a little bit more of a conversation. If they're willing to have the conversation, I'm
That's a
open to the
no.
discussion.
On
But
what
I
issue
want,
specifically?
I want. Well, the debt. I mean, there was about $8 trillion worth of debt added under the Trump administration. There will be about $8 trillion added under the Biden administration. I'm a deficit hawk. I ran for Congress because we have so much debt added. And so we have to do a better job on draining the swamp. The FDA under Trump with Scott Gottlieb, he went right out the revolving door back over to Pfizer
Right.
and then began suppressing speech on Twitter. So there are some things I would like help with the COVID investigation. And if Donald Trump is willing to say, when I am elected, I'm going to release all of the information for the presidency for my investigation, that would go a long way towards getting me.
Okay, well, if you decide to do the endorsement, please come back and let us know. Senator Rand Paul, thanks for your time this morning.
Yeah, good luck with
I'm
that.
Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And clip.
I can't imagine that happening, but I would be pleasantly surprised, and I think a lot of people would be too. Okay, I really like this. I'm going to play a little bit of this. This is from RFK Jr. at the Bitcoin conference, and I have not pulled any clips yet from President Trump's speech there too, but they both spoke at the Bitcoin conference one day after the other, and I believe Kennedy spoke on Friday, and then Trump spoke on Saturday. Good stuff here. This is about 7 minutes. It ends. The ending is awesome. The way that RFK Jr. ends this is just amazing. I found it amazing.
During his years in the White House, President Trump has consistently spoke out against Bitcoin. In December of 2020, he was openly hostile to Bitcoin and tried to outlaw self-custody wallets. This was a time when Americans, particularly more than any time in our history, needed any store of value that they could get to compensate for the hits to their income from the lockdowns, from the declining purchasing power due to the money printing orgy and the COVID closures of all of our businesses. In 2021, President Trump doubled down and declared that Bitcoin, it just seems like a scam. I don't like it because it's another currency competing against the dollar. I'm happy that President Trump has had this evolution. I'm proud that I helped blaze a trail that made it easier for other political leaders to follow. And I'm grateful to the 50 or 60 million Bitcoiners like Michael Saylor, who were there before me and helped me understand the nation-saving potential of Bitcoin. Every Bitcoiner I know shares my own yearning for freedom, or my skepticism toward official orthodoxies and pronouncements, and an inclination for critical thinking that I most admire. During COVID, neither President Trump nor President Biden protected our constitutional rights. They both restricted our right to assemble, to worship. They closed our churches, no funeral for grandma, no weddings. They closed our businesses without due process or just compensation in violation of the Fifth Amendment. They ended the Seventh Amendment right to jury trials. They assaulted the Fourth Amendment prohibition against warrantless searches and seizures, and also both these administrations allowed the FBI and the spy agencies to suppress our rights to free speech by working with social media companies to deplatform people who criticize government policies. I hope that President Trump's change of heart in Bitcoin is evidence of a newfound and deep-seated commitment to personal freedoms, to our Constitution, to our Bill of Rights. Will President Trump fight for Bitcoin if he's elected? I wish he had mentioned Bitcoin in the RNC speech last week. I'm disappointed. He spent a lot of the last week attacking President Bukele of El Salvador, the only country on a Bitcoin standard. President Bukele is the most popular president in El Salvador's history. And with Bitcoin's help, he has turned the country around. Bitcoin helped him grow the economy and reduce crime. The U.S. should want to take a page from President Bukele's playbook and learn some of the lessons that he has to teach us about Bitcoin. And even more alarming, President Trump, in an interview last month with Bloomberg, floated the idea of bringing on Jamie Dimon as his Secretary of Treasury. I'm grateful that President Trump yesterday walked back that comment, but I'm not sure how he could have ever considered bringing on one of the biggest long-time critics of Bitcoin and the world's ultimate advocate for centralized control, if he truly is committed in his soul to the freedom and decentralization that we all are committed to. Those choices don't match the spiritual alignment of Bitcoin. Bitcoin represents personally, I would rather see somebody like Michael Saylor or Caitlin Long as Treasury Secretary.
I'm gonna play this one. I think this is the good clip here. This is a good one.
I want to be the president who can bring back hope. And I'm grateful to be part of your Bitcoin community. In fact, I don't think of myself as red. I don't think of myself as blue, and I don't even think of myself as purple. Those are the colors of the political parties. Instead, I think of myself as orange. That is the color of freedom. And it's true that President Trump has orange hair. And I can only admire him for that from afar. I'll never be able to match him on that. It's a really great start. But I have an orange heart, and that's what you should support. Thank you all very much, and God bless you.
I just love that. It's a nice swipe at President Trump, but even when Kennedy is criticizing Trump, he's still respectful. He's still just very, very nice guy. Let me see if I have any other short clip. Oh, how's the ear? Oh, this has got to be a good one with Trump. Now, of course, I'm all about Hulk Hogan. Can always play that one, but let's hear how's the ear, because I think that's a big one.
How's your ear?
Good. Getting much better. We're getting down to the small bandages, but it was a nasty one, and it was a nasty period. That was exactly 1 week ago from today, exactly. And when you think about it, that's been a lot of territory covered. Who would have thought this was going to be happening? But it happened, and I got very lucky. Or God. I think it was God, actually.
You know who said it was not God? Who? Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, said he gave you that chart of illegal immigration.
Well, he's right about that. He actually gave me the chart. If I didn't have that chart, I wouldn't have looked to the right. If I didn't look to the right, a very bad thing would have happened. I wouldn't have been at the convention. I can just about guarantee it.
That's right.
Now,
where were you when Butler happened?
I was actually playing mini golf with my kids, hoping that he would call me and offer me the vice presidential slot. And, what happened. And I told my kids, I said, we got to get out of here. The president's been shot. And of course, we didn't know if the president was okay or not at that point. And my son said, Daddy, is it the president who's your friend or the president you don't like? I said, it's the president who's my friend. And he said, okay, I'm sorry about that. And it was a very sweet moment. And I think we were all just so grateful the president was okay.
So the ear's better. You have the smaller bandage on. Have you asked to see the wound?
I have not. No, I won't. Though I do find it hysterical, Jesse. You have these people who are like, why is the president wearing an ear bandage? He got shot in the ear. And these are the same people who are wearing masks, right? 5 years after COVID. So it's pretty ridiculous.
When you were down by the podium, we heard a lot of kerfuffle. You said something about shoes.
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, they wanted to put me on a stretcher, they had a stretcher and they wanted to put me on a stretcher. And I said, I'm not going on a stretcher, because I just felt it was the ear. And there was a lot of blood coming. I don't know if you've heard this, but the ear causes, they say, the most in the body. You get hit in the ear. Better than just about any other place in one way, but in another way it bleeds more. And there was a lot of blood, but I understood they thought I was hit elsewhere. They thought I was hit actually in this area. And I wasn't. I said, I'm telling you, I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm going to get up. I want to get up. I'm not going to be taken out on a stretcher. We had a little argument. Well, I have 6 guys lying on top of me. I mean, I had some big guys on top of me.
Yeah.
The strong guys too. I can tell you that by the wrist. The wrist had a little work on it. And brave guys, because they ran onto that stage very quickly. I was down for the most part because when I looked at my hand, I knew it was something very serious. I put my hand up. I looked at it. It had blood all over it. But I had a lot of big, strong humans on top of me, and they were very brave humans because they were running into fire, and he kept going.
That's good stuff.
He probably thought
There is maybe one more clip that I want to play. One from Kennedy, posted on X, which I think is really good. And then I've got to move on. Got to get back into this book, back into the writing phase. It's been so much fun writing this book, even with everything happening, all the twists and turns, kind of not knowing where the book was going to lead me. Definitely did not expect it to lead me here, and who knows where it'll lead. It's not going to be finished until the story is done, until the job is finished. And you have 2 men who need to finish the job, RFK Jr. and President Donald J. Trump. And only one can win. Only one can win in a fair and square election. If you discount, we're talking about, yeah, well, we won't even talk about that. So here on RFK Jr.'s X, I'm going to play this. This is about 2 minutes. I have not seen this yet, but I've been wanting to see this for a while. Make sure the quality is as best. X has got to do something about that 720. We need some 1080p here. Let's go.
I am running to be president for all of America.
We are all here because we love our country, right? Not for some, but for all. Cheaters.
Nasty people.
Fraud.
Oh, we're not going to have a country left. Lying.
Predators.
So now we have a new victim. Lying Kamala Harris.
I know Donald Trump's type.
Lyin apostrophe.
Sexual abuse.
You're fired.
There's a crisis in our country that's deeper than any of the other issues that politicians normally talk about. It's a crisis of division.
And it took us 230 years of visionary, disciplined leadership by Republican and Democratic presidents to build up those reservoirs of love and respect and moral authority around the globe.
And being part of a community is painful because you can't just make decisions based upon your own self-interest. You have to account for the costs and impacts of those decisions on other people.
We need to learn to talk with each other, dispute, have conversation and discourse without hating each other. We need to start being kind to each other. We need to start being respectful to each other. This tribalistic, us versus them thinking is tearing us apart. And we've given Democrats a chance to fix this country. We've given Republicans a chance. What has not had a chance is a unity government headed by an independent president beholden to no party, free from corporate influence, owing no favors to the Washington establishment, and ready to recruit the best ideas from both parties and from all of those who've been left out. This is the path back to a strong and prosperous America. I know people are ready for it because everywhere I go, people tell me they're sick and tired of the division and they're sick of the hatred. They want mature leadership that isn't about us versus them. With your help, I aspire to offer that kind of leadership and head the first unity government of the United States of America since George Washington. God bless you and God bless our country.
All right. That was awesome. And he can definitely do it. as we've talked about before, if anyone can do it, it's Kennedy. He is the man to get that job done. If it's not Donald J. Trump, that's why I really, Kennedy 2024 is awesome. Kennedy 2028 sounds great. Sounds great to me. So that's what I wanted to play. That was really good. That was better than I thought it was going to be. There's some other ones, so hopefully everybody is paying attention to Kennedy and Trump. This is unlike anything else that we've seen. And I'm just so excited, so happy that we have these two great candidates who want to make this country great again. And the country can be great again. We got to get rid of the virus, get rid of the toxic people that we have in the White House right now. And the best way to probably end this may be to just go here. You got about 5 more minutes and just go and look at Truth Social. Truth Social. This is good. Kamala recycles Biden's failed agenda. Anything with Jesse Waters, is going to be good. What's interesting too? I found this pretty interesting. Is that I was very curious when Trump, who would he give the first interview to? And I thought definitely thought it would be on Fox News, no doubt about that. I didn't really expect Jesse Waters. I was thinking more Sean Hannity, and I'm so glad it wasn't Hannity, blowhard Hannity, because I just cannot stand Sean Hannity. And I was pleasantly surprised when the only interview I've seen, I know there's one, and maybe I'll play that. There's another 10-minute interview or 10-minute clip on Fox News of Trump that just came out. I don't know what that's about, if that's part of the interview from last week or whatever. It doesn't look like it because he doesn't have the tape on the ear anymore. But I was very surprised and happily surprised that it was Jesse Waters who got the interview with Trump and not Sean Hannity. Just not a Sean Hannity guy. That dude is just, he's a neocon. He's just so out of touch for me. But anyways, I did find myself listening to Sean Hannity, watching some of his stuff when he couldn't find anybody else. But then I found this guy named Jesse Waters. This is going to be good. If it'll play. Why do they do this? This happens way too often. And maybe it's on...
In Washington, D.C., the words President Kamala Harris used to be an inside joke. Last year, party kingmakers tried peeling her off the ticket. The headlines were everywhere. Democrats shouldn't ditch Joe Biden. They should replace Kamala Harris. The case for Biden to drop Kamala Harris. For the country's sake, Vice President Harris should step aside. The Kamala coup was in full swing. Her whole staff had quit, and they were leaking she was a soul-destroying boss and a bully. Biden wasn't the problem. Kamala was. High-level Democrats had to rally around an 82-year-old Joe Biden because they feared the nomination of Kamala Harris. Joe Biden was fighting Father Time because he was concerned Kamala wouldn't be able to beat Trump. Alas, Kamala survived her coup, and Joe didn't. But Joe had the last laugh. Investigative journalist Cy Hirsch says Obama dangled the 25th Amendment over Biden's head to get him to step down. Now, Fox hasn't confirmed that, but sources close to the Biden family say Joe gave Barack one big FU. If I'm out, then I am endorsing Kamala, is what Biden said. And Barack's fuming. Sources tell the Post that Obama knows she can't win and is furious that things haven't gone his way. He wanted an open primary, but Biden backed the party into a corner and jammed Barack, which is why his endorsement video wasn't ready. It came almost a week later. So what does the left do when they're about to lose? Lie. They want you to believe the woman they tried to fire is giving Trump fits because she's the next Obama.
What he sees in Harris's rise is that she's becoming a cultural phenomenon. And I think that's very difficult for him to process and deal with because it can be very politically potent.
The celebrity president with a mugshot and an ear pierced by an assassin's bullet isn't the cultural phenomenon in the race. It's Kamala, the pantsuit messiah. Democrats say she's potentially Obama on steroids. And New York Magazine says, welcome to Camelot. There's an actual Kennedy in the race, and they're giving Kamala the Camelot cover story. They're using the same special effects on Kamala that they used to disguise Biden and are calling it momentum. But in brand new polls, Trump's beating her in Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Georgia. So is Kamala Harris making anyone change their votes? Black men said no.
How many of you know a black man who has expressed to you that they're committed to voting for Donald Trump? Okay. For the brothers who have told you that or said that to you, has the emergence of Kamala Harris changed that for those brothers? No.
Same new sales lady, same bad product. Voters aren't buying it. Let's hear from some white guys in Michigan.
Does Kamala Harris getting in the race change the equation at all for either of you?
Change it, it ruins it. If she gets in, we're done. So
Done with what?
America's done for.
This isn't what CNN and MSNBC were expecting. But she's got to have the ladies on her side, right? Miranda Devine in the New York Post says this: she has achieved nothing on merit. Every plum job has been handed to her by a powerful man. She's a man's woman. Every woman knows the type and instinctively does not trust her. Everything about her drips with insincerity. Democrats can try to rebrand Kamala, but the Biden record's hers. Broken border, crippling inflation, 2 proxy wars. And voters are already realizing Kamala's more radical. Defund the police, abolish ICE, decriminalize border crossings, ban natural gas exploration. That's Kamala Harris. It's on tape. She campaigned on getting rid of private health insurance. She's into slavery reparations. The woman wants government-run daycare, literally the nanny state. You have a baby, hand it to the government raises it for you, cha-ching, that'll be $2 trillion. We can't afford Kamala Harris. She's a dangerous Marxist who wants to turn America into San Francisco. But they're making her into a mythical figure and hiding her record like they hid Biden.
Okay, well, there it is. I think that's some good stuff right there. There is another thing I see about Trump here. I don't think I'm going to play that. Oh, Trump answers whether he will debate Kamala or Harris or not. I feel like I've got to play that for some reason. I feel like I must. And here we go again. This is another interesting thing here, because we again have the scenario of President Trump doing interviews on Fox News, but not with Blowhard Hannity. And I think that's awesome. I like that. I like the fact that Trump is doing interviews with everybody except for Mr. Blowhard Hannity. But there's a reason. There must be a reason. What are they holding out for? Well, maybe they're going to have Sean Hannity host a debate between Kamala Wanalea and President Donald J. Trump, the Ugandan giant. Only time will tell. I'm going to play a little bit of this without the closed captions. Fox News 2 at 7:20. That's how they roll. Let's play a little bit of this here.
Christians that they won't have to vote in the future.
Yeah, let me say what did I mean by that. I had a tremendous crowd speaking to Christians. Almost, I mean, this was a crowd that liked me a lot. I think I'm at 97% or something. And they're treated very badly by this administration, okay? Catholics are treated unbelievably. They're like persecuted. And if I might say, before I go into the other, Jewish people, if you're Jewish and you vote for Biden or the Democrats or Kamala or whoever's going to run, I guess it's going to be her. But if you voted for her or the Democrats, you should have your head examined, because nobody's ever been treated so badly by this. This administration is destroying Israel, et cetera, et cetera. So with respect to like a statement like I made, that statement is very simple. I said, vote for me. You're not going to have to do it ever again. It's true, because we have to get the vote out. Christians are not known as a big voting group. They don't vote. And I'm explaining that to them. You never vote. This time, vote. I'll straighten out the country. You won't have to vote anymore. I won't need your vote. You can go back
So
to
you meant you don't have to vote for you because you have 4 years in office.
Look.
Is that
Christians are known. You know who else doesn't vote? Gun owners don't vote.
But
They don't
just to
vote.
be clear, what you're saying, though, you're not saying it's being interpreted as you are not surprised to hear.
No,
by the left as well. They're never going to have another election. He's saying there's not. So
First time I've even heard.
can
No,
you
no.
even just respond to that?
I said Christians. I started off by saying, just so you understand, you never vote. Christians do not vote well. They vote in very small percentages. Why? I don't know. Maybe they're disappointed in things that are happening, but for a long time, I say, you don't vote. I'm saying go out. You must vote. November 5th is going to be the most important election in the history of our country. Whether you vote early or not, we should have, by the way, one-day voting. We should have voter ID. We should have proof of citizenship, and we should have paper ballots, okay? That's what we should
Totally
have, but we
agree.
don't have that. But I said to the Christians in the room, thousands of them, I said, typically Christians do not vote. Why it is, I don't know. You're rebellious. Something's going on. Don't worry about the future. You have to vote on November 5th. After that, you don't have to worry about voting anymore. I don't care, because we're going to fix it. The country will be fixed, and we won't even need your vote anymore, because frankly, we will have such love. If you don't want to vote anymore, that's okay. And I think everybody understood it. I didn't know there was any.
Yeah, well, I mean, because it's the constant refrain. I mean, after they have done all the things that we've talked about. Tonight,
horrible.
All of the things.
I mean, I understood it clearly, exactly what he was saying, but you have to kind of know Trump's humor too, his sarcasm, the way that Trump talks, his Trump-isms, to really understand that. So when my wife showed me the headline, Trump says Christians, last time they have to vote, they'll never have to vote for him again. It's completely taken out of context. And it's like, wow, that's the best they have. That's the best that they can drag up to try to go against Trump. They got to try a lot harder, because that ain't going to work. But it is sad that Christians do not vote. That's a pretty sad thing, whether it's true or whether it's not. And he said, I think in a different speech, he said that the National Rifle Association, they don't vote either. It's like, if anyone should be voting, and I don't know, maybe that's why God is doing all this and putting us in the spot that we're in now to wake Christians up. And you guys got to vote. You're going to have what's happening in Paris. You're going to have what's happening in our libraries with these drag queen story hours. You're going to have all of this stuff. You're going to get a president who sniffs children. This is what's going to happen if Christians do not vote. So, I've been trying to hold my tongue on this thing for years. Oh, if you don't vote, then you have no say. But it's getting harder for me to say that now. It's like you can't complain, and you want change and you want this, but you won't take the time to go and vote to make that change, to make your voice heard. What are you going to do to make your voice heard? Stand in front of a street, stand in front of cars, do something to disrupt, create anarchy and chaos? That's not going to help. It never has, and it never will. Never has, never will. Oh, I think that's a good place to end.
Russia,
And-
all the things.
And dump their guy of 52 years, just dump him to the side. So they do all that, and then they say, well, no, you can't vote for him because he's literally never going to leave office. They're actually still saying that.
It's just unbelievable.
But you will leave office after 4 years.
By the way, and I did last time, I kept hearing, he's not going to leave. He's not going to leave. Look, they are the ones that are a threat to democracy. Number one, they had an incompetent man as president, okay? Now they have somebody who's worse. She's sort of incompetent. She's not very smart, but she's very radical. Very radical. She will try and defund the police. She's going to try and defund
Is she more of an extremist than most
Bernie.
Americans today still understand?
Than Bernie. They say more than Bernie Sanders.
Oh, he endorsed her.
Bernie Sanders is a major lunatic, okay? She's worse than Bernie Sanders. Now, she's trying to come back. She got rid of the laugh. I noticed I haven't seen that crazy laugh that she got. She's crazy. That laugh, that's the laugh of a crazy person. But I noticed that she's not using that laugh anymore. Somebody convinced her, don't laugh, just don't laugh. Don't laugh under any circumstances, because
I like laughter, but sometimes.
Not her laughter.
But she claims now she's tough. She's tough on crime. She was a tough prosecutor. Never the borders are.
She was a bad prosecutor. She was a prosecutor of black people. She put thousands and thousands of black people in jail. over marijuana. But when it came to big crime, murders and everything else, she was weak. She would love to go after Trump. You know, she says, oh, Trump, 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 I did nothing wrong. They did a lot wrong, but I did nothing wrong. This was a totally manufactured deal. This was an attack on a political opponent. And she was involved in that with Biden. And so far, it's backfired because people know this was an attack on a political opponent.
And I think that's a great place to end it. And just look at the ear. The ear looks good. No problem with the ear. We're not seeing any issue with that ear. So that's all good news. God bless America. God bless you all. Remember, Jesus Christ loves you, and so do I. Until next time, good folks, good people, you know what to do. Hope everybody is doing well. It's interesting to be here on YouTube and on Facebook at the same time. Don't know how this went or how it goes, but you know what? We're going to do whatever we can here. This world, this country, we're in some interesting times. I don't believe it's the end of days. I don't even think we're close to the end of days. But I do believe we are in a very important time in our history, and I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm privileged to be a part of this. And you're all a part of it too, because this is for our children, for our parents, for our family, for our children's children, for the future, for the past, for everyone. But mostly, everything here is because of Jesus Christ. It began with God, and this will end with God. God is moving. God is working. Let's see what happens as we get closer to the 2024 presidential election in November, less than 100 days. I will be back. God bless you all. I love you, and Jesus Christ loves you even more.